Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to another edition of Daybreak on Trust TV, coming to you live from the studio of Trust Television here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. It's another Monday, it's another beginning of another week, and of course, we're inching towards the end of the month of November. And with me,
Good morning, Abdulaziz. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here once again. Another beautiful morning, as he has said, and it feels good to be here. The beginning of a new week, we pray for nothing but the absolute best for each and every one of you this new week. I'm Darshan Husseina Usman, and thank you for joining us.
Did you watch the match yesterday with Qatar? The opening, there's a very elaborate opening ceremony, and then, of course, Qatar was receiving a lot of bashing on social media that they had spent the $220 billion to prepare for the hosting of the World Cup, and then they ended up being
in the desert.
defeated.
Aside that, a lot of people kept saying, going to the desert. But, one thing I realized is the fact that, most of the countries that actually host end up being defeated in their home country. Why is it so?
Well, perhaps it's a jinx or something, but of course, it's not. It's one thing to host the World Cup, and also it's another thing to have a good team. So you may have all that it takes to, to host the World.
Do they come up with like a bicycle attitude, saying, "Oh, we're at home, nothing can happen to us." That attitude. Yeah, as long as we're at home, they can't defeat us or something.
Well, perhaps, but a lot of them actually, some of them that get this kind of defeats, you find out that they actually don't have good teams. So it's like maybe they are football enthusiasts, but maybe not really too good at it.
Sure. All right,
okay, let's maybe move into the show properly by looking at some of the major headlines this morning. PDP crisis, G5 floods integrity group insists on not campaigning for Atiku.
Bandits abduct 19 people in Zamfara community.
FIFA World Cup, Ecuador beats host country Qatar in tournament opener.
Now the details. Now the 5 aggrieved governors of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, have announced the formation of the Integrity Group. This was announced when the G5 met in Lagos on Sunday. At the meeting, the group said no going back on the decision not to be part of the campaign of the presidential candidate Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. They also demanded the resignation of the party's national chairman, Dr. Iyorchia Ayu. The governors present at the meeting include Nyesom Wike Rivers, Seyi Makinde Oyo, Samuel Ortom Benue, Okezie Ikpeazu Abia, and Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi Enugu. Other PDP chieftains at the meeting included former Governor Ayo Fayose of Oyo State, Donald Duke of Cross River State, and Jonah Jang of Plateau. Former Deputy National Chairman of the party, Chief Olabode George, Deputy Chairman of the PDP, Taufik Arakpaja, Chief Dan Obi, Senator Olaka Nwogu, Senator Mao Ohwabunwa, Senator Nassif Suleiman, among others, were also there.
Meanwhile, armed bandits on Saturday evening abducted 19 people, including 3 nursing mothers with their 1-week-old babies in Zurmi local government area of Zamfara State, Daily Trust reports. The abduction came barely 48 hours after more than 40 people were kidnapped from Kanwa village in the same local government area. A lull had prevailed after years of deadly attacks on communities in the local government, but in recent times, abductions and pockets of assaults have resurfaced, making residents become jittery once again. The mass abduction is believed to be perpetrated by a notorious bandit leader called Dankaremi, who is known to have been terrorizing residents in Zurmi, Birnin Magaji, Jibia, Axis in Zamfara, and neighboring Katsina State. Meanwhile, troops are closing in on bandit camps in the dreaded Gando forest, making armed criminals flee, residents told our correspondent.
All right, and finally, the 2022 World Cup begins Sunday in Qatar as Ecuador pipped host country 2-0 in the opening game of the tournament. In a world divided in so many ways, the tournament is a rare uniter. FIFA Soccer's international governing body projects 5 billion people tune in again,
With
making
tolerance
the
and
month-long
respect,
events the most
we can live
watched
together
sports
under
spectacle
one
on the
big
planet.
home.
The
In
start also
Arabic,
signals the end
Beit
of
al-Sha'ab
12-year
is the
build-up
Bedouin tent.
that has
Wherever
been
it is
more
built,
complicated
that is
and
home.
controversial than
And when we
perhaps
call you
any
here,
World Cup
we
before.
welcome you into our...
Okay, moving on to more packages. Government and well-to-do individuals have been called to support women in the society, especially in the area of empowerment, to make them more self-reliant. In this report, our correspondent takes a look at new self-reliant women can contribute, how self-reliant women can contribute meaningfully to society. The reports.
Although this is not the world's first female cobbler, and definitely won't be the last, the passion with which this woman tackles a craft is what endears her customers to her. Success Doshima values her art beyond just monetary benefits, and this truly amazes a lot of people. There are a few of her kind whose story interests a lot of people.
If you don't see me here, you should be in the house. So, me coming back late and all those kind of things, I don't have time for friends.
Success is determined to change the narrative of men dominating the industry.
I met a man that he said he doesn't believe in the work, but because he bought the foreign shoe, so he should just give it a try. But thank God I didn't disappoint in him giving me the try, and I put through.
But more importantly, she believes that self-reliance will go a long way in curbing youth's restiveness.
You should believe that we the youth can do better. We can do something around us. We have quality things. We just need facilities to express ourselves. And we need platform also to show that we are good.
Success could not further our education beyond secondary school because of the economic situation of the country, and is calling on the government and well-to-do individuals to support young people so that they can look beyond white-collar jobs, which are few and far between.
The advice I have for the younger ones, or the ones that are coming up, or the ones that are still there waiting for someone to encourage them, is for you to know your type of vision. It might not be this shoe vision that you have.
So how does she react to disapproval from friends and family members over her newfound love for shoe production and repairs? Success Doshima says she settled for a masculine-oriented craft because she likes working with young men who appear more focused in life. She insists that there is no skill limited to men or women, stating that when men find themselves in traits that are tagged feminine, such as hairdressing, they tend to do better. Success Doshima therefore sees no reason why women who find themselves doing work popularly perceived to belong to men should not also excel. Kabir Lawal, Trust TV News, Abuja.
When a lot of people these days actually seem to think that women do not want to do anything, but when they put their mind to it, then they excel in whatever job they decide to do. And you know, is it a man's world or a woman's world?
It is a woman's world. I don't think that is that is debatable,
Okay.
because yeah, of course there are still issues around, you know, in some places allowing or encouraging women to engage in gainful activities like this. But at the end, whatever the man do, it goes back to the woman.
Exactly.
But of course, you know, even all this poverty, you know, at the weekend there was a report about poverty index, like 133
Yes,
million
133
Nigerians and
million.
all that. You know, it's because, you know, women constitute more than half of the Nigerian population. And even if you look around in families and all that, you see like almost, you know, 50-50 kind of ratio. And then if the women are excluded from economic activities, that it means
what
every little
happens?
thing that the men, you know, got, it will have to be sprinkled around, and it may not go around. So, you know,
Well,
we have
it's
to
actually a good thing, you know, when women engage in men's jobs, you know, and
No, of
also
course.
excel in it.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's move on to more stories. Women in Jos, still on women, are being sensitized to regularly engage in self-breast examination and medical checkups to enable them know their status and health condition. This is because breast cancer is becoming alarming by the day among African women. Ado Abubakar Musa completes the report.
An estimated figure of 2 million women are said to have suffered from breast cancer in 2020 alone, with several deaths recorded. Despite the huge number of sufferers and fatalities, many are still ignorant of the fact that the disease is reaching crisis levels. With the prevalence of breast cancer cases in some parts of Plateau State, vulnerable women are being educated on the need for regular medical checkups.
Saboda likitoci sun ce larurar ta yi yawa a cikin garin Plateau.
The reason why we organize this sensitization is because of the cry by medical doctors that the breast cancer disease is prevalent among women in Plateau, and that is why we saw the need to create awareness among both Christian and Muslim women on the need to take precautionary measures against the disease.
Likitoci za su yi dangane da abin da ya shafi wannan cuta da yadda take farawa da yadda kuma ake magance ta da yadda.
It's alarming, more especially between Plateau. It's very, very alarming. We usually call the attention of all women, all parents should take care of her daughter or herself.
Medical practitioners from Jos University Teaching Hospital, Jude, and Jos North Primary Healthcare Unit share more light on the symptoms and treatment of the breast cancer.
We go around sensitizing people, telling them what breast cancer is, and then how they can notice and know if it starts, because once we pick it early, people have lived for more than 20 years after diagnosis of breast cancer. So if they are able to identify and pick it early, meaning something can be done. It's when people present late, which that's the norm in most of our hospitals, the looking world, people come at advanced stage. It's when she has pain or the smelling, or if there's bleeding or something, that's when they go to the hospital.
Breast cancer is usually changes that usually occur in the female's breast, especially those that are not in the childbearing age, that is 45 years and above. The breast become bigger, that is one of the breasts sometimes become bigger than the other. In that case, when a woman experiences such changes in her breasts, what she should do is that she should not stay at home or seek advice from her family members or community. She should directly go to the hospital.
Special guests who represented some Muslim and Christian organizations added their voices to the call on women to be serious about their health and those of their children. Ado Musa, Trust TV News, Jos.
Now, away from that, youth in Benue State are worried that the African way of life is vanishing due to Western influence. They are worried that most cultures in Nigeria are endangered and called on the government to address the trend in this report.
Well, for a long time, what I knew about our people was mainly the New Yam Festival. I didn't know about what we talked about, like how a woman is supposed to be during marriage, how we assimilated the traditional marriage for a long time. I didn't know about any of this. It was upon my return to Benue State that I actually started finding about it. So this has really, really affected me in not knowing how to speak my language, in not being able to properly talk with my tribesmen. I have a fear of going to the village due to the fact that I don't really know how to speak with my native tongue.
For me, bearing the Oche in my name, it's just an identity that confines me to be an Idoma. But if I will use the word, I am maybe an alien to my own culture, but maybe an accepted indigene of the Hausas, because growing up, my parents, most especially my mother, would actually communicate with us using Hausa, and my friends around.
These are some of the experiences shared by some residents of Makudi. They are worried that they cannot fit into their own cultures, no thanks to their upbringing in places far from their ancestral homes. The aspect of culture most affected is language. The residents feel native languages are not given adequate attention as channels through which cultures are transferred from one generation to another.
I grew up in an environment where it's dominated by the Hausas. Then in my house, in my family, we were speaking English, more of English and Hausa alone. But my dad will always scold us. Each time he comes around and feels we are speaking or hears us speaking English or Hausa, he scolds us. He will permit me to use my language. Sometimes he has always said it, and that has always sunk in us. With that, we got to learn how to speak our language through my father, because my mom was also speaking that language with us.
It's not taken. Indigenous language may go down, except otherwise, if we arise and begin to provide materials so that it will become enough, can be printed, can be taught in school. Like in my school in those days, we were taught how to read, even in primary school, in our languages. So I think if that is put in place, we'll go a long way to helping the situation.
Most importantly, they say that parents can play a good part in training the young ones to preserve the languages they inherited from their forebears.
Believed that culture cannot be separated from language. And when we look into what is happening to our culture in Africa, we discover that many things have actually entered into our culture. When you look into how our people speak, even their dialect or language.
The English, French, and other European languages are gradually taking the places of many African languages. In Nigeria, the Pidgin English, an adulterated form of the English language, may soon take the place of our indigenous languages if a deliberate policy is not enforced to save the situation.
A very interesting report there. Moving on, before the advent of democracy in 1999, youths have been referred to as the leaders of tomorrow, but the popular refrain seems to mock the youths of Nigeria 23 years after the return of democracy to Nigeria, as the number of youths in both elective and appointed positions seem inadequate. Salis Lawang explores the knotty issue of evolving a more youth-centered democratic process in this report. Take a look.
While structural factors provide an important insight into how young people engage in the political space, the most important factor is how they themselves perceive their situation. Mass youths seem to have attained political enlightenment and appear to be ready to correct misalignment, which has limited their political stake.
By next year, this time around, we are already 24 years in democracy. But tell me, even a child that is born barely 20 years ago can tell you he has not witnessed anything called dividend in democracy. Nothing. And we have accepted it as a defeat, and it's wrong. We have accepted it psychologically that, okay, politics is make money, spend the money on your people, look for the money again, you come back, they get you elected for the next position. And this is catastrophic. It's not going well for us, and it will never breed anything good for us. Generation yet unborn will grow up, will give birth to our children, they will call us failures. I'm not ready to be called a failure.
Youth now are ready to take back this constituency by the grace of God. So issue of youth, we are all together with youth. In fact, all of us are youth. We, the YPP, we are ready to bring everything to the everything to the possible way.
These young contenders believe the awakening of youth to their engagement in the political arena is a relatively new priority, but extremely timely.
What I'm just saying is that there should be a window in your life, not only politically. There should be a window in your life that you always live for another chance. And it is this window that I'm asking. Please consider me with this chance too. Maybe you will have a change of mind that we are not all the same. So it's not about I have been disappointed all the time. Maybe this one time that you will give a chance, you will see the difference.
Stakeholders said meaningful youth participation in politics is key to realigning the political system so that young people and youth-centered organizations can access more opportunities. From Yola, Salis Lawan, Trust TV News.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, you know, the issue of leaders of tomorrow, and then a lot of young people ask, when is the tomorrow coming?
It's present now. Now, I love what one of the respondents actually said. He said, even if it's a little space, you keep talking about, wanting the youths to be involved in politics, but then you're not even giving them a chance. How is that supposed to work out?
Exactly. That's the actual problem, and especially in the political space where money bags and godfathers determine a lot of things, and most of these determinations are not in consideration of encouraging young people and all that. And I think it's about time, as indicated in the report. It's been 22 years, of democracy, and even persons who were born after this return to democracy are now adults. That, of course, and so it's about time young people have, get the space, get the opportunity to also prove themselves. And with that, we go on a short break. When we come back, the show will continue.
That's great.
But in a situation where you find that they must look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. If you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV, and it's now time for the newspaper review. We'll start by reeling out stories on the front page of the dailies this morning, and we will begin with Daily Trust newspaper. Now, the lead story here talks about Southeast gets lion's share of Nati's controversial recruitment. We have writers on that story that says Northeast, Northwest get lowest, CSOs demand accountability, relatives of board members among recruits, why we hired more staff. And if you just below that particular story is an infographic of everything, some issues identified with Nati's recruitment, talking about loop-sidedness, hiring of staff's relatives, failure to advertise vacancies, no evidence in waiver, the staff strength, the zone with the highest number, and every other thing that goes with it. Now, moving on to more stories. Nigeria to earn 32 trillion naira from North's new oil fields. You can find details of that story on page 23. NAF airstrikes kill bandits, destroy camps in Kaduna and Zamfara. We also have Ecuador coast past hapless hosts Qatar in World Cup opener, and the details of that story is on page 39. These are some of the stories you can find on Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Up next is the Punch newspaper. And, on the top of the page, pro-Fayemi lawmakers plotting my removal, says Ekiti speaker. Story on page 14. And next to it, stalemate, aggrieved PDP governors weigh options. Story on page 2. Then, Nigeria risk food crisis in 2023, says IMF. Then just beside the masthead, how foreigners, middlemen capture Nigerian gas market. It's a story on page 42 and 43 of today's Punch newspaper. Then the big story today, NFIU flags 150 trillion transactions. EFCC tracks candidates' spending. And then the story has riders. One says suspicious transactions up by 22.91% amid rising political activities. EFCC intensifies surveillance on APC, PDP, others campaign funds. Banks get fresh EFCC NFIU directives as 2023 polls draw closer. And then, of course, there are some pictorials showing preparations for Christmas. It shows Zenith Bank lights up Victoria Island for Christmas. And just below that, on the bottom of the page, Ohaneze endorses Obi, says it is our turn. Story on page 28. Then government abduct Kwara cleric's son, demand 100 million naira ransom. Lastly, mob lynches transport bus for killing Oyo teenager. These are some of the stories in today's The Punch newspaper.
All right, up next is This Day newspaper, and from the top of the page there, we have Zenith Bank activates Yuletide season with Ajoshe Adeogun Street Christmas light up. We also have Oyetola Bags World Bank Award emerges best governor and efficiency of public expenditure. You can find details of that story on page 12. The lead story here talks about Kwankwaso. I'll never step down for Atiku Abubakar. And we have writers that says promises to renegotiate nation's debt, says APC PDP 24 years responsible for insecurity and woes, insists on restructuring pledges to employ 2 million police, military. NGE wants issue-based campaigns. And just beside the pictorial there, you have G5 governors meeting disrupted in Lagos amid chant of Atiku, Atiku, Atiku. And there's another pictorial there of Tinubu's condolence visit to the Akandes. These are the stories on This Day newspaper.
Okay, the next newspaper to look at is the Nation newspaper. And on the top of the page, interest rates hike likely as CBN reviews indicators. Then while we are backing Obi, says by Ohaneze, he symbolizes hope. Story on page 5. Next to that, Ekiti Assembly boils. And then Oyetola wins World Bank Award on expenditure efficiency. Cleric abducted in Kwara. Story on page 6. And just below the masthead on the left, on the red strip, more Nigerians seeking UK visa, says High Commissioner, and 9 die in road crash. Below that, 13% derivation, weakest disclosure unsettles South-South governors. And then the big story today, 2023, G5 governors allies to sustain anti-Atiku moves. And it has bullets. Aggrieved PDP governors chieftains meet in Lagos. Wike Makinde Autumn Ipeazu insists on Ayu's sack. And just at the very bottom of the page, the red strip down there, government killed 3 policemen in Enugu. Saudi-bound woman held with cocaine. So these are stories on the Nation newspaper this morning.
All right, let's move on to the Guardian newspaper. We have the lead story here that says next government to inherit 71.5 trillion naira debt liabilities after May 29. And we have some writers under that story. Federal government blames oil theft for massive borrowing. Economists prescribe securitization of flexible repayment, urge government to pursue growth policies. There's so much corruption in bureaucratic processes, says Utomi. And just below that story, you have doubts over use of second Niger Bridge for Yuletide. Zenith Bank heralds Yuletide season with Ajosha Deogun Street Christmas light up. And at the top of the page there, again, Kwankwaso rules out NNPP merger with LP. And we have 133 million poor Nigerians. Serap urges Buhari to probe spending on social intervention programs. And these are some of the stories on the Guardian newspaper.
Okay, up next is Business Day newspaper, where the lead story says Nigerian stock go from hero to zero, which is the big story on the Business Day this morning. And by the left side, there are some other stories. Weak Naira inflation weigh on rates decision as MPC meets. MPC, that is the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Then IMF raises doubts over NNPC's fuel consumption figures, story on page 30. Next is what to know about Nigeria's first floating LNG. That's the details of that is on page 31. Then lastly, IGET outlines ways to curb poverty in Nigeria. These are some of the stories on the front page of Business Day newspaper. The pictorial there, shows Chief Operating Officer Technip Energies Limited, Julius Ryan, Managing Director IOTM LNG, and President JGC, and Paul Bille, Vice President Operations KBR, standing behind. And some other chieftains during, when Nigeria's High Commissioner to the UK, Farouk, and then, of course, Farouk Ahmed, CEO, Nigeria's Midstream and Downstream Regulatory Authority, and George Benga Komolape, CEO, Nigeria Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, at the signing of the front-end design agreement for Nigeria's first FLNG in London. So this is some of the details that we have on the Business Day this morning.
All right, moving on, it's Daily Sun. We have the lead story that says military gets order to tame terrorists before elections. The writer here says we've been directed to stop criminals and gunmen from disrupting polls, says soldiers. Just beside the nameplate there, why we endorse Peter Obi by Ohaneze. We also have protests as North gets lion's share in NAS new appointments. And then we have hope rises for increased production as Buhari flags off oil exploration in Bauchi, Gombe. Fighter jets kill scores of terrorists in Kaduna. CP orders manhunt for killers of 3 cops on stop and search duty. We have still on insecurity, unemployment will determine how rural Nigerians will vote, says survey. We have APC PDP main problem of Nigeria, says Kwankwaso. PDP crisis, Wike allies meet in Lagos, form integrity group. We have crisis hits Adama APC, stakeholders favor Ribadu for Gober ticket. And Lekki-Ekpe corridor may be washed away by 2024, NCF alerts. And these are the stories on Daily Sun.
Well, the last paper we'll be looking at this morning is the Vanguard newspaper, where the lead story says how politicians still threaten credible polls. INEC source, and the story has some additional details. IREV Red Chiefs will check rigging, how Nigerians can key in. Immediate access to uploaded polling unit result by voters is key. What voters must know and do to navigate the IREV spare. Patriotic INEC staff averted rigging plots in Anambra governorship poll. And the details of the lead story is on page 5. And then at the top of the page, how strict adherence to rule of law can salvage 2023 elections. Full Federal High Court pre-election practice direction, story on page 14. And former Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, saying, I studied law to fulfill my father's wish. And then by the side of that, FG's domestic borrowing crowds out private sector in 2022. And if you come down on the page, Zenith Bank heralds Yuletide season with Lagos Christmas light up. And then 2023, it is turn of Southeast to produce next president, Ohaneze Indibo. And then PDP crisis, we are still open to reconciliation, says G5 governors, others. And then terror alert, we notified FG. We notified FG, says UK envoy Lang. And then 2023, I won't step down for anybody. NNPP's party to beat, Konkoso says. And then government kidnap Kwara cleric, son, sibling demand 100 million naira. And then of course in the World Cup, Ecuador, Qatar 0, Ecuador 2. Qatar World Cup opens with fanfare despite criticism. Story on page 39 of Vanguard newspaper. So these are some of the details and some of the top stories in today's newspapers this morning. And, we'll be looking at some of the, analyze some of the stories with us in the studio. It's an analyst who will be joining us to, shed some light on the issues. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, so we have Dr. Lanre Oluwani, he's a public affairs analyst, joining us today on the newspaper reviewer. Let's begin with the lead story on Daily Trust, a newspaper that talks about the Nati controversial recruitment and how Southeast gets lion shares. It also says that there's a lot of loop-sidedness in this recruitment, and a lot of staff hiring relatives, talking about nepotism here. What's your take on
And then
this?
maybe if you can tie that up with, I saw something similar also in the Sun newspaper. Why is it so? People actually, maybe everywhere you go, you see this kind of problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. We're in a society whereby there is job scarcity. We cannot rule out the fact that we have a lot of high rate of unemployment. And when there is a little space somewhere, you discover that is who knows somebody that get those slots. And they were even complaining that no publications. These are jobs that they just did it underground, bringing people in before it blew to the media. So I believe we still have a lot of work to do. That's just the truth. No matter the zone that they are talking about Southeast, the other one we're talking about the North getting the lion. So we still have to see how to balance all this. That's just the truth. We can't continue this way. There should be equity, there should be fairness, and we should balance everything we are doing so that there will not be a room for suspicion that these people are getting more things more than us or whatever. But and at the same time, they're supposed to publish it and make it a public thing, and let there be interviews, let there be due process, and let the job be given to those that merit it. But instead of bringing family, these, whether they even qualify or they don't qualify, is another story for another day. So, but I believe we just have a lot of work to do on that, and the government have to look for a way. Though, as far as I believe, that federal government cannot be the largest job recruiter in any nation. But they can only try their best. So we should also advocate for our youth to come. Let's face the reality. In any part of the world, federal government or for any nation, they are not the highest job recruiter. So you should look inward, you should look outside the box, think of how to generate employment by yourself, and also look at the private sector as well.
Well, a lot of people seem to prefer the government jobs because they feel it's more secure than private, or it's even easier considering our economy, to even start up your own business. And the CSOs here are demanding for accountability.
Yes, there must be accountability, and the reason why people feel that federal government is more secure is because the federal government is not able to regulate the private sector in terms of Labor Employment Act law, because in the sense that some of them are going to private sector, they are not pensionable. It's not acceptable. Someone will work with the private organization for 20 years, 25 years. There is no job security. You can just wake up one morning, give a query, and sack the person. So it's uncalled for. It still lies in the responsibility of the federal government. There must be a check and balancing so that people can feel comfortable anywhere they find themselves, not just a federal government job. If you find yourself in the private sector, you must be comfortable because you know that you are protected, your interest is protected, your right is protected, not place whereby people who are just paid anything they feel they can pay them.
Okay, some of the papers, of course, Daily Trust still on the front page, and some other papers have written about the oil exploration that is starting around Bauchi, Gombe in the north. And Daily Trust is saying that the federal government may get up to, Nigeria may get up to 32 trillion from those oil fields. What's your thoughts about this, in view of two things? One, our experience with oil in the Niger Delta, and also the fact that even the world is going perhaps away from the fossil fuel currently.
Yeah, it's a natural endowment that God has given to us, and we have discovered another in the northern part of Nigeria. It's a good news. But the Ghanaian government, when they discover oil in their country, they said they don't want to make the mistake that the Nigerian government made. They have to come and study our own system and check our loopholes before they start exploration. So like what you said, when they discover oil in that area, they have to check what are the challenges we are facing in the Niger Delta. What are the issues that make us have a blessing and at the same time we are complaining. So it's a blessing, but it should not become a curse at the end of the day. So they should look inward and have a proper review before exploration, not just rush into exploration.
All right, well, let's move on to page 3 on Daily Trust newspaper that talks about TRCN conducting, that's Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria, conducting qualifying exams for 11,629 teachers nationwide. Now, we know it's one thing, for teachers to be employed, and it's another thing for them to, be qualified. So do you think with these exams, it will up the ante of our educational sector?
Normally, there is a program called Train the Trainers. You can't just be a teacher and there will not be a sense of upgrading all the time. So I believe when the former governor of Edo State was the governor of Edo State, there's a way he used to do it. He just called them for exam. They come and write. And he discovers that some of the teachers they're not up to the standard. So I believe it's a good direction, it's a good thing to do. It's going to improve our educational system for real. That's the truth.
Well, the Guardian newspaper says next government to inherit 71.5 trillion debts and liabilities after May 29. We are already been talking about budget deficits and all that. Even the 2023 budget is being funded largely from borrowing and all that. So what do you think, the next government coming to inherit this kind of, debt?
Yeah, so far so good. We are aware of it, that we are borrowing a lot for the last couple of years to sustain our budget, which is not literally good for our economy. And because we base our economy on a mono economy, so we cannot run from the facts of we cannot sustain it. Now, the question now is we have the problem at our hands. Me, I don't dwell much on problems. I talk more of solutions.
Mm-hmm. So what's the way out now?
What is the solution ahead of us? Now, we are having a new government coming in by May 29, 2023. Now, what we need to do as a Nigerian citizen is to now interrogate their manifestos, their blueprint of such issue on fiscal economy and monetary policy. What are they bringing on board? That's the reality. We have the problem, yes, agreed. but how are you going to solve it? And I could be able to lay my hands on some of them manifestos, and I can see what the APC presidential candidate is bringing on board in the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. What it's literally saying is that we will not base our budget economy on exchange rate any longer, which means on dollar rate. And that is really key because we base our economy on the exchange of dollars. By the time dollar rise or fall, it affects our implementation. So, and when we are able to base our economy on our naira and expand the IGR, the revenue of the federal government, we have a problem of revenue. There is no doubt about that. We can't be working, we can't be generating money on a one particular product alone, and you expect us to be growing as a nation at this. There will be a time that we are going to get stopped, and we are getting closer to that time. So the best thing is, any government coming in, like Asiwaju said, you must think outside the box. You must change, we must increase our revenue, spread, think outside the box, check what to do, other things to do, other things to produce, other things to harness within our country, and we move forward. So the debt is there, but we must see out. We can't continue acquiring debt over and over and over. It's not done. So I believe so far so good. If he's coming on board and he's ready to implement what he said, I believe it's a good thing for this economy.
One naughty issue is the issue of fuel subsidy. Of course, I remember, I think maybe most of the candidates, including the person you mentioned, has also indicated his intention to withdraw the fuel subsidy. But do you think that will really be good for the economy and especially for the economic situation of the common man?
Now, the issue there, what is subsidy? Subsidy is just the money paying so that the money that the people that are buying the petrol or buying the diesel will be lesser. Federal government is paying part of the money, which is almost close to 6 trillion as we are talking right now. And to pay that money, they have to borrow and they have to source for money elsewhere so that the common man will not feel the heat. Now, and as Asiwaju Bola Ahmed said, we are going to stop subsidy. And when we stop subsidy, and the best way they can do it, before you stop subsidy, you have to make your refinery, either you get more refineries, or you get the one that you have working. If the one you have cannot work up to a maximum performance, let's get us a new refinery, which I believe they have their way.
Sorry to have to cut you short there, but let's quickly go back to the crime and city and crime page on Daily Trust newspaper. We have a story here that says, I killed my mother-in-law, one other to cover up my sex affair, says suspect. We have the APC chairman dies in FCT. A mentally ill man lynched in Suleja over child theft. 2 nabbed for attempting to dupe a woman of 0.6 million naira. Police arrest chemists for selling expired drugs. We have NSCDC nabbed 75-year-old man over rape of a grandniece, 6 years in Jigawa State. We also have Saudi-bound widow nabbed with cocaine. NDLEA uncovers hemp ecstasy tabs in yam tubers. 9 killed, 3 rescued as car plunged into Kano Dam, and woman locked up by hubby for months without food dies. And what do you think about the surge in crime in the country today? Recently?
Yeah, I always said it. There will always be one crime or the other. We need to increase our police system. Now, the majority of this issue lies with the law enforcement agents. How you secure our environment and how you handle most of these cases is very important. Because some of them, if you are not able to get justice, they feel bad. So what's important most is that if there is any crime being committed, let there be justice. You can't rule out crime anywhere in the world. I always say it. There are crimes, and that is where we have police everywhere in every country. So their responsibility is to secure the life and property of our citizens and reduce and curb crime. Before it happens, let there be a measure to stop it.
Okay, that's an interesting one. And talking of crimes, lately, still reported by Daily Trust, now airstrikes kill bandits, destroy camps in Kaduna and Zamfara. There have been some stories recently coming out from Borno, from the Northwest, regarding this. What's your thoughts about this upscaling of military activities in recent past? Is it anything to do with the elections coming or something?
No, it's a good news. You discover for the past last 2 months, you only can see on our front page of newspaper, 7 killed, 10 kidnapped, so place. That has radically reduced to a minimum level. So they have worked on themselves. It's a security issue. It's not something to be disclosed, but we can only encourage them and give kudos to them. It's a good job.
Okay, now let's go politics. The
G5 governors.
Is that what you're also thinking of?
Yes, exactly. The G5 governors, you know, and allies sustain the anti-Atiku moves, saying they will not campaign for Atiku until all their demands are met. You know, recently we actually thought they'd called in a truce.
Yeah.
Yes, and everything has been sorted out, but we're hearing this again.
You know, the issue there is there are more things to this issue than what we are saying. And the candidate of PDP, he has made a big mistake. Immediately the election is over, immediately a candidate has emerged. The best thing to do is you already know the aggrieved people. So the best thing for you within 1 week, before you even talk about vice president, the first 1 week should be a way to reach out to them, give them confidence, let them know that we are together. That's the truth. Let them know. Give them a confidence. He's a veteran. So everybody expects him to know more than this. That's why you can say that people are not really expecting something like that to come from his camp. Because see, you are experienced politicians, so you should know what will happen. Definitely you contest with people, you step on people's toes, and when that is over, they have issue of their vice presidential candidate issue. They could not even handle that one as well. Set up a committee, I need this name, you know the stuff. At the end of the day, another thing came up from there. They finished that one. You are constituting your PPC, Presidential Campaign Council. You are also not balancing it in a way that, okay, who will be my DG, who will be... So all these things just coming up after. So those things were the issue that pile up in the heart of all this G5. That's the truth. From presidential primary to vice presidential issue to inauguration of presidential campaign committee. So they now come up, they now look for a loophole, which I don't blame them. That we want equity, we want fairness, and we want justice. Let Mr. Ayu go according to our constitution. Another man cannot be a candidate of a party and another man be the chairman of the party. So they use that as a bait. And at the same time, it's not too rigid. Only what you just need to do as a leader is still call them. Try to see how you can put a confidence. Because they feel sidelined. They feel betrayed, which is part of politics. But what you just need to do is to restore their confidence. That you are what we are together.
So there is not enough conversation, you mean?
That is not enough. That's not enough. There are a lot of
but some say these guys are just all out to wreck the boat of the PDP, and even if Ayu is removed, they will not be satisfied.
No. How can you put down a house that you built? It's easy. You think they are happy doing what they are doing? If they are happy doing what they are doing, they won't be saying it all the time that they are open for reconciliation. They spend a lot to build the party. So,
okay, so now maybe before we wrap up, there is the presidential candidate of the NNPP saying that he will not step down for anybody. Of course, this day newspaper specifically said, I will not step down for Atiku Abubakar. But of course, other people say he will not step down for anybody. Now, how are these two presidential candidates, especially the NNPP and Labour Party, going to affect the 2023 election?
The issue there is that everybody have a right to contest, and every politician will tell you you will win election. There is no any politician you meet today that will not tell you you will not win the presidency. But the facts and figures are there, what it takes to win a presidential election in Nigeria. We all know that constitutionally. Now, they will affect the voting pattern, which you all know, because like someone like Peter Obi is the one that will cover a lot of southeastern, even south-south. And that is a stronghold of PDP since 1999. So in that area, you can't rule out the reality that Obi will definitely do well in that area. So come to the other region, I cannot boast of that, which is the reality. The same thing about Kwankwaso. Kwankwaso will do well within the Kano metropolis, Jigawa, Sokoto, up to Zamfara. So he will do well. That's the truth.
Okay.
But yeah, the other part of the country, I don't believe to.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on the newspaper review this morning on Daybreak to analyze some of these stories with us.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that was Dr. Lanre Oluwani, a public affairs analyst. And with this, we'll take a breather. When we return at the top of the hour, the show continues. Stick around.
But in a situation where you find that they look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
That's great.
Good morning, and thank you for staying with us on Daybreak this beautiful morning. We're live in the Federal Capital Territory, and we're live also on Trust TV. I'm Dasha and Husseina Usman.
It's a beautiful morning here indeed, and thank you very much for joining us. And of course, it is Monday today, the 21st of November 2022. And we are here coming live from the Trust TV studio. And Husseina, I don't know, the Hamatan is here. I don't know if you...
Yeah, it's been a week already. Yes, exactly. It's been quite... But I don't know, the Hamatan came and it's like it disappeared because it was really hot this morning.
Well, exactly. The weather actually keeps... is fluctuating. And I think that's why... You know, a lot of people have been complaining about, yeah, of course it's climate change. A lot of people have been complaining of discomfort, fever, things like that. Because
even
I
flu
think,
at this time of the season.
Because the, what do you call it? The weather is not really settled. It's just keep fluctuating and all that. Well, we hope that we all weather the storms and go, go over it in one piece and very well. So let's now have a look at some of the major headlines this morning. PDP crisis, G5 floods integrity group insists on not campaigning for Atiku.
Bandits abduct 19 people in Zamfara community.
People are woke up.
So we gather here as one big tribe.
And now the details of the highlights. The 5 aggrieved governors of the People's Democratic Party have announced the formation of the Integrity Group. This was announced when the G5 met in Lagos on Sunday. At the meeting, the group said no going back on the decision not to be part of the campaign of the presidential candidate Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. They also demanded the resignation of the party's national chairman, Dr. Iyorchia Ayu. The governors present at the meeting include Nyesom Wike, Rivers State, Sheyi Makinde, Oyo, Samuel Ortom, Benue, Okeze Ikpeazu, Abia State, and Ifeanyi Ugwanyi, Enugu. Other PDP chieftains were also at the meeting.
Okay, moving on. Bandits in Zamfara State have abducted. I beg your pardon. Armed bandits on Saturday evening abducted 19 people, including 3 nursing mothers with their 1-week-old babies in Zurmi local government area of Zamfara State, Daily Trust reports. The abduction came barely 48 hours after more than 40 people were kidnapped from Kanwa village in the same local government area. A lull had prevailed after years of deadly attacks on communities in the local government. But in recent times, abductions and pockets of assaults have resurfaced, making the residents to become jittery once again. The mass abduction is believed to be perpetrated by a notorious bandit leader called Dankarami, who is known to have been terrorizing residents in Zurmi, Birnin Magaji, and Jibia Axis on Zamfara and neighboring Katsina State. Meanwhile, troops are closing in on bandit camps in the dreaded Gandop forest, making armed criminals flee, residents told our correspondent.
Okay, moving on, and finally on stories on
and
highlights.
Together
The 2022
we can send
World
out the
Cup
call
begins Sunday
for
in
all
Qatar
the world to
as Ecuador piped host country 2-0 in the opening game of the tournament. In a world divided in so many ways, the tournament is a rare uniter. FIFA, soccer's international governing body, projects 5 billion people will tune in, again making the month-long event the most watched sports spectacle in the planet. The start also signals the end of a 12-year build-up that has been more complicated
with tolerance and respect,
than perhaps
we can live
World
together
Cup
under one big home.
Okay, now moving on to more packages. There has been an argument whether sugarcane is fruit or vegetable. But the fact remains, it is consumed irrespective of where it belongs. Abubakar Sadiq sampled opinions of Zaria residents where sugarcane is grown on why people consume sugarcane. He also examined its health benefits to the people in this report.
Sugarcane is a species of tall perennial grass that is used for sugar production. Sugarcane belongs to the grass family, which is so economically important with different benefits. According to experts, sugarcane helps in boosting energy improves digestion, prevents aging, and even helps diabetic patients. Malam Muhammadu Nazifi, who is into sugarcane business and sells the commodity for over 18 years, said sugarcane is mostly consumed by people for excitement, joy, and pleasure. He said it is not considered as a food, but at times its consumption relieves one from hunger. Nazifi said the sugary taste of the species while consuming makes people to engage in talks that are not necessarily relevant. Also commenting, Malam Noura Ahmed, who started selling sugarcane for the past 15 years, said people are fond of consuming sugarcane as a means of satisfaction. Ahmed argued that some people regard sugarcane as a food because it fills their stomach and satisfies their hunger. A consumer of sugarcane, Salisu Jibril, said he has been consuming the species for a number of years and will continue to consume it as long as he has the money to buy. Salisu Jibril added that sometimes he consumes sugarcane as a food, but most of the time as a pleasure and for excitement.
Okay, I take it like 3 times a day. No, it is my pleasure.
A nutrition Bashir Abubakar Magaji Basharata said sugarcane can be regarded as a crop, a fruit, and a vegetable because it belongs to the grass family. Basharata said part of its health benefit include energy booster, immune booster, and it helps in cleansing the liver.
That's a fact. And honestly, some are use it for prevention, the what we call hepatomegaly. You know, the liver when it is affected with some diseases. So one out of the important of that sugarcane is used to clean. Yeah, it's clean the liver. Yeah.
From Zaria, Abubakar Sadiq Muhammad, Trust TV.
So what do you think, Abdulaziz? Is sugarcane a fruit or a vegetable?
That's one naughty question, so I don't know actually.
Well,
as the reporter says, we all take it. So.
Well, according
do you
to
know?
Yeah, according to reports, it's neither a fruit nor a vegetable. It's not even a soft drink. It's actually grass.
Okay.
It's a perennial grass, you know, like a bamboo that stores sugar in its stem. So it's a grass.
And
so
what a blessed grass it is. Yeah, that's very quite. But of course, you know, very, as I said, quite a blessed grass and nutritious, helpful, and key to so many things. You know, we
especially
do
for Weight Watchers.
because you do sugar, you do refined sugar. You also have ethanol from the impurities and all that. And well, with that, let's quickly go on to the next report. Government and well-to-do individuals have been called to support women in the society, especially in the area of empowerment, to make them more self-reliant. In this report, our correspondent takes a look at how self-reliant women can contribute meaningfully to society. The report.
Although this is not the world's first female cobbler, and definitely won't be the last, the passion with which this woman tackles a craft is what endears her customers to her. Success Doshima values her art beyond just monetary benefits, and this truly amazes a lot of people. There are a few of her kind whose story interests a lot of people.
If you don't see me here, you should be in the house. So me coming back late and all those kind of things, I don't have time for friends.
Success is determined to change the narrative of men dominating the industry.
I met a man that he said he doesn't believe in the work, but because he bought the foreign shoe, so he should just give it a try. But thank God I didn't disappoint in him giving me the try, and I put through.
But more importantly, she believed that self-reliance will go a long way in curbing youth's restiveness.
We should believe that we, the youth, can do better. We can do something around us. We have quality things. We just need facilities to express ourselves. And we need platform also to show that we are good.
Success could not further our education beyond secondary school because of the economic situation of the country, and is calling on the government and well-to-do individuals to support young people so that they can look beyond white-collar jobs, which are few and far between.
The advice I have for the younger ones, or the ones that are coming up, or the ones that are still there waiting for someone to encourage them, is for you to know your type of vision. It might not be this shoe vision that you have.
So how does she react to disapproval from friends and family members over her newfound love for shoe production and repairs? Success Doshima says she settled for a masculine-oriented craft because she likes working with young men who appear more focused in life. She insists that there is no skill limited to men or women, stating that when men find themselves in traits that are tagged feminine, such as hairdressing, they tend to do better. Success Doshima therefore sees no reason why women who find themselves doing work popularly perceived to belong to men should not also excel. Kabir Lawal, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Women in Jos are being sensitized to regularly engage in self-breast examination and medical checkups to enable them know their status and health condition. This is because breast cancer is becoming alarming by the day among African women. Ado Abubakar Musa completes the report.
An estimated figure of 2 million women are said to have suffered from breast cancer in 2020 alone, with several deaths recorded. Despite the huge number of sufferers and fatalities, many are still ignorant of the fact that the disease is reaching crisis levels. With the prevalence of breast cancer cases in some part of Plateau State, vulnerable women are being educated on the need for regular medical checkups.
Saboda likitoci sun ce larurar ta yi yawa a cikin garin Plateau.
The reason why we organize this sensitization is because of the cry by medical doctors that the breast cancer disease is prevalent among women in Plateau, and that is why we saw the need to create awareness among both Christian and Muslim women on the need to take precautionary measures against the disease.
Likitoci za su yi dangane da abin da ya shafi wannan cuta da yadda take farawa da yadda kuma ake magance ta da yadda.
It's alarming, more especially between Plateau. It's very alarming. We usually call the attention of all women, all parents should take care of her daughter or herself.
Medical practitioners from Jos University Teaching Hospital, Jude, and Jos North Primary Healthcare Unit share more light on the symptoms and treatment of the breast cancer.
We go around sensitizing people, telling them what breast cancer is, and then how they can notice and know if it starts, because once we pick it early, people have lived for more than 20 years after diagnosis of breast cancer. So if they are able to identify and pick it early, meaning something can be done. It's when people present late, which that's the norm in most of our hospitals, the developing world, people come at advanced stage. It's when she has pain or the smelling, or if there's bleeding or something, that's when they go to the hospital.
Breast cancer is usually a changes that usually occur in the female's breast, especially those that are not in the childbearing age, that is 45 years and above. The breast become bigger, that is one of the breasts sometimes become bigger than the other. In that case, when a woman experiences such changes in her breasts, what she should do is that she should not stay at home or seek advice from her family members or community. She should directly go to the hospital.
Special guests who represented some Muslim and Christian organizations added their voices to the call on women to be serious about their health and those of their children. Ado Musa, Trust TV News, Jos.
Yeah, the issue of brain cancer is one thing that is affecting a lot of women. You know, so many women are, dying from breast cancer, and of course, it's very malignant. I don't know, the prevalence is just so
Yeah, it's actually high, you know, in Africa. You know, it never used to be so, you know, in Nigeria and Africa. But you know, these days you have even really young women suffering, you know, from this particular disease. I had a friend who recently died from breast cancer, and she was just in her early 30s. Really sad.
Yeah. Well, we hope, and you know, one issue with cancer, not only breast cancer, but all forms of cancer, is the issue of treatment. And year in, year out during World Cancer Days, and you read reports about how the patients actually suffer because of lack of access to care and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we hope something is done about that, because this is something that is, you know, quite fatal. You know, it kills easily, and the earlier it's detected, and also the better it's managed, the better for all of us. So let's now take a look at another story. Youth in Benue State are worried that African way of life is vanishing due to Western influence. They are worried that most cultures in Nigeria are endangered and call on government to address the trend. The report.
Well, for a long time, what I knew about our people was mainly the New Yam Festival. I didn't know about what we talked about, you know, like how a woman is supposed to be during marriage, how we assimilated the traditional marriage for a long time. I didn't know about any of this. It was upon my return to Benue State that I actually started finding about it. So this has really affected me in not knowing how to speak my language, in not being able to properly talk with my tribesmen. I have a fear of going to the village due to the fact that I don't really know how to speak with in my native tongue.
For me, bearing the Oche in my name, it's just an identity that confines me to be an Idoma. But if I will use the word, I am maybe an alien to my own culture, but maybe an accepted indigene of the Hausas, because growing up, my parents, most especially my mother, would actually communicate with us using Hausa, and my friends around.
These are some of the experiences shared by some residents of Makurdi. They are worried that they cannot fit into their own cultures, no thanks to their upbringing in places far from their ancestral homes. The aspect of culture most affected is language. The residents feel native languages are not given adequate attention as channels through which cultures are transferred from one generation to another.
I grew up in an environment where it's dominated by the Hausas. Then in my house, in my family, we were speaking English, more of English and Hausa alone. But my dad will always scold us. Each time he comes around and feels we are speaking or hears us speaking English or Hausa, he scolds us. He will permit me to use my language. Sometimes he has always said it, and that has always sunk in us. With that, we got to learn how to speak our language through my father, because my mom was also speaking that language with us.
It's not taken. Indigenous language may go down, except otherwise, if we arise and begin to provide materials so that it will become enough, can be printed, can be taught in school. Like in my school in those days, we were taught how to read, even in primary school, in our languages. So I think if that is put in place, we'll go a long way to helping the situation.
Most importantly, they say that parents can play a good part in training the young ones to preserve the languages they inherited from their forebears.
Believed that culture cannot be separated from language. And when we look into what is happening to our culture in Africa, we discover that many things have actually entered into our culture. When you look into how our people speak, even their dialect or language.
The English, French, and other European languages are gradually taking the places of many African languages. In Nigeria, the Pidgin English, an adulterated form of the English language, may soon take the place of our indigenous languages if a deliberate policy is not enforced to save the situation.
All right, well, with that story, we'll take a quick breather, and when we return, the show continues. All right, welcome back and thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV, and it's now time for our first discussion. Now, since independence, the guiding principle of Nigeria's foreign policy and the pursuit of its national interest in both its bilateral and its multilateral relations have remained a reflection of its perception of the international environment. In 1988, Nigeria officially announced its commitment to economic diplomacy, a result of the lingering economic crisis and structural adjustment program at the time. This essentially led to not only certain shifts in the analysis of Nigeria's foreign policy after 1988, but also a recap that also triggered a review of current policies in the Fourth Republic, which raised the following questions. Can Nigerian foreign policy be said to be consistent with economic development, or does it more or less remain altruistic in character and essence? Now, these questions, among others, will be our focus on the program today. And we have joining us in the studio the Nigerian ambassador to Burundi, His Excellency Dr. Elijah Onyagba. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning,
Thank you very
Your
much.
Excellency.
Yeah.
Now, let's begin from the basics. Some people say that in recent years, there is really no clarity about Nigerian foreign policy. Is it really clear?
Thank you very much for bringing me to your program this morning. The issue with foreign policy is that it varies from one administration to another. And being an ambassador under President Muhammadu Buhari, I can discuss, in clear details what the essence of Mr. President's foreign policy is about. I can tell you foreign policy is about the procedures and what you do to be able to defend or protect or encourage or promote your domestic policies in the international arena. It has a lot to do with protecting the territorial integrity of the country. It has a lot to do with ensuring that there are no forms of external aggression. It has a lot to do with engaging other international communities and to ensure a very good outcome for your country. It has a lot to do with ensuring that Nigeria's, maintains its dignity in the Committee of Nations. So for President Muhammadu Buhari, he's been very clear from day one what his foreign policy is like. And I can tell you, number one is that Africa is the centerpiece of President Muhammadu Buhari's foreign policy. And what does that really mean? It means that Nigeria sees itself as a leader in the continent. It means that Nigeria does everything possible to assist other African countries because it sees itself as the big brother within the continent. And for example, even for our neighbors, the policy is that we have to assist our neighbors without any condition attached to them. So that's why you see us trying to ensure that we have a good relationship with Niger, with Cameroon, and some of these countries that are actually neighbors to us, because maintaining that close relationship with those countries ensures that you are also protected as well. Because you can. That's obviously the easiest route to infiltrate your security. So clearly, for the president, he's been very clear. When he came on in 2015, he's been very clear about fighting corruption, for example. That's why the African Union made him the anti-corruption champion. And in addition to that, in most of the outings at the African Union, meetings with the European Union, at the United Nations General Assembly, he kept talking about recovery of looted funds. And he's done a lot of work in that regard. So I hear the issue about the conflict, about the non-clarity of a foreign policy, but that's not to be said with this government. You've seen the way he's engaged with the international community. Nigeria, under President Muhammadu Buhari, has had that, that respect, if you like, within both the continent and outside the continent.
Well, you talked about Nigeria, playing a leading role, and that's playing big brother to other African, countries. But do you think we're really living up to, that reputation, or are there challenges that we're being faced with?
The truth about diplomacy is that there will always be challenge. And at every particular point in time, every government is challenged with either the internal issues, because really foreign policy is engagement and ensuring that you get the best outcome for your country. I mean, it was very clear when President Trump of the United States came on, his policy was very simple: America first. You know, for Nigeria and for quite a lot of countries, they engage trying to see how they can get the best outcome in every form of engagement. And these engagements sometimes come in the form of bilaterals. It can also come in the form of multilaterals. You know, multilateral in the sense that you now have, you know, more than 2 countries coming together to negotiate. So in this, you know, you become everyone is basically trying to see how their country is protected in that. And that's what you find in the African Union, that's what you find in the European Union, that's what you find in the United Nations. So yes, I hear you loud and clear, but if you ask me to access what this present administration have done, I'll tell you clearly that some of the things he set out to achieve, which is to become a leader in the continent, the president is doing that very well, which is also to ensure that some of the things we wanted to drive locally, I'm sure at every United Nations General Assembly that the president speaks, he speaks on recovering the looted funds that we have stashed all over the world. And obviously you can, your guess is as good as mine whether that has been successful or not. He's also done very well in economic diplomacy, because if you look at the travels, if you look at the engagement, if you look at, you know, how we have succeeded, or he has succeeded in getting some Nigerians into very good positions at that multilateral level and at the international stage. Talk about the appointment of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala as the head of Director General of the World Trade Organization. Talk about what Nigeria is doing as a commissioner in African Union in charge of peace, security, and political affairs, Ambassador Bankole Adeoye. Talk about the fact that Nigeria is also the head of the African Development Bank. Talk about the fact that Nigeria is also the head of the African Export-Import Afrexim Bank in Cairo. So this has actually gone to throw Nigeria in the, you know, show Nigeria in a good light. And usually what we do and why we think it's important to maintain a very close working relationship with African countries is that no matter how big or how small a country is, it is one vote at the United Nations. So if you're very close to them, so what we basically do is to send out envoys to those countries to say, hey, Nigeria is interested in this kind of position, please support. Nigeria is interested in this kind of position, please support. And that's why you find out that any position that any Nigeria indicates interest at, you know, at that level, you find out that we get a lot of support from the African, you know, from African colleagues. So I think we've been largely successful. Yes, there are other things that needs to be done. Even the economic diplomacy I'm talking about, there's a lot more that needs to be done. Lately, there was this committee that was set up to look at the size of the Nigerian mission to see how they can be adequately funded. Yes, that's obviously a big issue, because while we think that closing down some missions might make some sense, other countries like Egypt also doesn't think that's the way to go, because they even have, Egypt have more missions within the African continent and the world than Nigeria. They also fund their missions much better than they do for Nigeria. I understand the funding constraints, but that is not to say, because what happens is that you go ahead and shut them down. After some time, you begin to also see the need to reopen them. So you go back again and you reopen them again, because you can't be a leader without having a lot of platforms or presence, how to negotiate with the rest of the countries. So that's what Nigeria claims to be the leader in Africa, and to that extent, we've done, you know, fairly well so far, because we've been engaging very well. But I also think that even shutting down missions is not the way to go. At some point, we will express interest at you know, having a seat at the United Nations Security Council. At some point, we'll express one or two, and you find out that if you are not there negotiating with the country and talking to them, you know, how do you seek for their support? So that's basically why my own personal assessment of our foreign policy. Yes, there are challenges, but I think so far so good in my opinion.
Talking about leadership, and of course, as you said, there are challenges. There are supposed to be benefits that come with that leading role, that come with that positioning as a giant of Africa. And let's talk specifically around the area you are currently serving. You know, Southern Africa, for example, Nigeria,
Eastern Africa.
I mean, okay, you are in Eastern Africa, but also your neighbors in the Southern Africa, even parts of Eastern, yes. Even parts of Eastern Africa. Nigeria played a key role in some of their struggles for independence and other stability issues. But then recently, we've been having challenges of Nigerians facing dehumanizing, treatment in some of these African countries, even closer home in Ghana and all that. What is happening, really?
Well, thank you very much for that very important question. There has always been, the struggle between Nigeria and South Africa, for example. Let me isolate the countries and deal with them one after the other. There's always this economic struggle, power struggle, which economy is bigger, which market is bigger. So we've always had that subtle, issue with South Africa. But be that as it may, I think the challenge Nigeria have had with South Africa is not just even about Nigerians, that there's this xenophobic attacks that they've constantly had over the years. And it's not peculiar to Nigeria, even though we know that, whenever we get into a country, we have a lot of presence. There are lots of Nigerians in South Africa. But clearly, they also seem to have forgotten the level of sacrifice Nigeria has made, or Nigeria made in the course of their struggle during the apartheid season. So we continue to engage and we continue to remind the government of South Africa. Don't forget where we are coming from. It's always not a very good thing in the international scene to have governments that have short memory. So we will continue to remind them, and we've achieved some successes here and there, but it can never be Uhuru in the international arena. If you come to East Africa, for example, Nigeria is fairly doing well in East Africa. Around the East African corridor, Nigeria has a very good relationship with Kenya, with Uganda, with Burundi, for example, even Rwanda. If you come to Burundi, Nigeria's embassy is one of the most respected embassies in the Republic of Burundi. Why? Nigeria has been standing for Burundi. There are times when we have had to send people through the United Nations to help them, within the period of their crisis. We've made several donations to assist the country. And clearly for Nigeria, it's important that we have a good presence, within the East African corridor. Tanzania, you also know, Nigeria have also got a very good relationship with Tanzania, and even the likes of Congo DRC that recently joined the East African community, bringing it closer home within the West African coast. Yes, we've had this issue with Ghana. Ghana is not as big as Nigeria. The economy of Lagos is larger than that of the economy of Ghana. But you also know that there are legacy issues. Cast your mind back when we had Ghana Must Go in Nigeria. So clearly, maybe that's once in a while you begin to also have that kind of treatment. What we have seen from Ghana, it's not very good, because time and time again they've had costs to go to shops, close down Nigerian shops, try to get them or frustrate them in one way or the other. But clearly both countries are signatories to the ECOWAS protocol that allows for a movement of people, goods and services across the continent. So they can't deny the fact that both of us are signatory to that protocol. Clearly, what they've done in those instances are not the best outcome for the country. But again, in the international arena, diplomacy basically means that you continue to engage. You continue to engage with the right spirit and try to find a way to get the best outcome for your country. And usually when you have a spike in any of those issues, what you find is that the government of Nigeria sends special envoy to go and sit down with the government of the country to begin to look at areas of addressing those issues. In the case of South Africa, I know that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs sent some people to South Africa, some ambassadors and very senior officials of the ministry, to sit down with them and begin to look at the agreements again. What can be done, or how do we make it better? I understand at some point they were asking for Nigerian business people to ensure their goods in the event of those outcomes. But we were also negotiating to say, listen, if this happens to our people, what we're going to do is to have the government responsible, take responsibility for those kind of losses that come as a result of those xenophobic attacks. But we are negotiating, and I'm sure at the end of the day, before we append our signatures, be rest assured that Nigeria as a leader in the continent will get the best outcome for its people.
All right, well, some quarters actually seem to believe that Nigeria should review, overhaul its foreign policy, saying old visions are used for new issues in the Nigerian policy. Now, do you think there's a big change, in the recent years compared to how Nigerian government have formulated their foreign policy in the past?
Yes, I totally agree. The reason why I will tell you that I totally agree that there's a need for review is because things are changing in the world. The world is not static. What was an issue yesterday is no longer an issue today. And too many things have come. It's just like when Nigeria say it's fighting security, the insecurity challenge, we've seen it metamorphose from taking over territories in the country to banditry. So things keep changing, not just on the security issue, even in the economy. You've seen a lot of the impact of the digitalism of the economy. A lot of things are going digital from what they used to be, from the manual processes that they have. Even our banking system, for example, at some point we were, as bankers, we part of the marketing strategy, or what you tell your customer, is that you're online. At some point is that we are online and we are real time. At some point is open account because we can give you an ATM card. None of those. You can imagine sitting down and someone walks into your office and says, "I'm a banker. Please open account with us because we are online." You take all of these things for granted. That is also the same that happens in the international arena. There are so many interests, and in addition to that, for Nigeria as a country, we must also clearly define what our interest is in every country that we go to. If we're in Russia, we're in Russia, what do we intend to get out of Russia? If we're in the United States, how do we engage with the people of the United States? And so on and so forth. So it's looking like sometimes some of these interests are very blurred and not very clear. So that's why I believe at this point in time, there's also a review of a lot of workshops and seminars have actually been going on in trying to review our policy. But again, the number one minister actually of foreign affairs is the president of the republic. It will vary from one government to another. I've read, for example, the APC standard bearers, the renewed hope document on foreign policy, and it's clearly made it very clear 3 points objective of what he wants how he wants to drive his foreign policy, and of course, he's also further broken it down into what happens, within the ECOWAS corridor, what happens in the larger African Union, how he engages with Europe and, of course, the rest of the West and all of that. So, yes, just like every other said, it's something that is rolling. The plan has to be rolling at every particular point in time. You want to sit back and look at what your objectives were, how successful have you been with those objectives, and what kind of impact have they also had on your domestic issues, because really foreign policy is about trying to advance some of the objectives you want to achieve locally at the international arena. So yes, I agree that there is a need for constant review of what our foreign policies are. It will always continue to happen, and of course, once every president or every leader comes in, they will also look at it to think about how they want to drive it, and then what kind of adjustments that they need to make to be able to achieve their own objectives.
Okay, when you made mention of the issue of economic interest in terms of foreign relations, and what comes to my mind is, of course, as you also said, that foreign policy is driven by our domestic policies and also an administration's vision. And now, looking at the Buhari government's protectionist strategy in terms of business, trying to protect local industries and all that. Look at, for example, the issue of border closure, ban on some importations and all that. How is that? Do you see that faring well in terms of our foreign policy?
Well, thank you very much. I know what you're talking about, and it's always important to understand the reason why certain actions are taken. At the time, Nigeria was like a dumping ground where, our borders are not very, very well protected. So what you find is that people through our neighbors getting all forms of goods into the country. A country of 200 million people were importing rice, things that we can easily cultivate in Nigeria. A country with over 200 million people are getting, what they call these used materials, what they call okrika or whatever it is. We are getting in even eggs, all kinds of vegetable products into the country. Cabbages and carrots and all of these stuffs are actually imported into the country. And of course, what the borders did is that you can actually they became so open that, you know, through Lome, through any of these Cameroon, you know, things actually are smuggled into the country. And it became a very big issue for the president. And we said, no, that's not the way to go for a nation. I think, you know, that was a very good policy at that time because it was important to also protect the local people because there is even something that Obasanjo's government called the backward integration policy. And what does that really mean? If you, for example, cement, we didn't have cement in enough quantity, even though we're a constructing nation. He allowed importation of those cements, but also gave all sorts of concession for the plants or for the companies that want to get involved in cement manufacturing in Nigeria, so that at some point when they start producing, then you can shut the border. Today we are actually very good with cement production. So that's also what the president felt it was important to do with sectors like agricultural sector. How can we be importing the food that we eat? It was important because we have the land, we have the manpower, and of course we have the rains that always falls and ensures that whatever we plant grow. And that was the reason why even the central bank had to step in to also assist farmers with all those kind of programs like the Anchor Borers program and a whole lot of other programs so that rice farmers can also begin to produce as much as we can consume in the domestic market. So yes, that was okay. It was also to protect the local industries because if you do not protect them, what you find is that people that bring in rice can actually cut down bring down the price so low that it becomes unprofitable for the local producers to even farm in the first instance. And how bad can it be for an economy when you cannot even produce the food that your people are eating? Is it that you don't have the land? Countries like Netherlands, for example, don't have as much land as one state have in Nigeria, yet they make a very significant percentage of their gross domestic product comes from farming. Do you understand what I mean? So clearly for us, it was something that is very important. You also find out that when you open your borders and you allow all of these things to come in, there is also the impact of that on your foreign demand for foreign exchange. Because what you find is that people will continue to look for foreign exchange to import goods that can actually be produced locally, especially food. It's actually very embarrassing. Any country that can't feed themselves is in a very, very difficult position. So it was a very good policy for government. And you can also see the progress that has been made. Yes, people can argue that the price of rice hasn't come down despite the closure of borders. But again, you see, when even prices go up, it encourages the local farmers in that production. So it also finds a way to reduce capital flight because that money that should have gone out looking for, encouraging the likes of Thailand and other countries that were producing rice and bringing it to the country is retained within the country. And that profit margin is also retained within the country, which is also very good. So it's not really a big issue. Every country must try to find a way to protect its own people. In the international arena, nobody has your interest better than you. You are the person that knows what you want. It's left for you to sit down and figure out how to go about it. And that's why it's always very good that from administration to another, we are very clear as a country what we want to achieve in the international arena. We wanted to protect our businessmen. We wanted to ensure that we are not exposed. Our monies are not moving to go and get the things that we need. If the monies are going out to get machineries to go into refineries, for example, machineries to go into manufacturing, we can understand that. But the situation where we are importing toothpick, importing pencil, importing pen, importing all manner of things, we are obviously exposing ourselves as a country.
Thank you very much. Now,
yes.
Let's go a bit personal. Yes. Usually ambassadors are, the idea of an ambassador is somebody maybe a gray-haired person with a walking stick and all that. How is it for you, becoming an ambassador at this age? And also, how does that speak to the issue of youth participation in governance?
Thank you very much. Yes, that's what you find. But I don't think I'm the Nigeria youngest ambassador. At this point in time, yes, but historically, we've had the likes of Matthew Mbu become an ambassador at the age of 20-something. Even Baba Gana Kingibe, His Excellency Baba Gana Kingibe, also was sent to Greece at a very young age. And if you also look at the international arena, you also find younger people that are
but
getting
lately that
involved,
has not been the experience. Maybe, for example, in the last 20 years or so.
Yes, so that also shows how it's important for younger people to get involved in governance. Mr. President appointed me without seeing me physically. And from what we've done, the records are there to show that we've brought in a lot of energy, a lot of passion, a lot of commitment, and a lot of drive into the business of diplomacy. If you get to Burundi today, like I mentioned earlier, we've won a lot of awards. The country has recognized us in some of the things that we've done. In about a year and 7 months in Burundi, we've held the Binational Joint Commission. We have had a lot of visitors coming from Nigeria to Burundi. We've sat down with the country and we've said to them, listen, remove Nigeria from the list of people that we need to look for visa before they come to Burundi. Let us deal with visa on arrival. We've signed a lot of bilateral agreements. We've signed one on education cooperation. We are looking at the protocol for implementation at this point in time. We've signed another one on political consultation. We are looking at that of technical manpower, or what they call the TAC agreements. We are looking at BASA. We are looking at economic and trade. We are looking at agriculture. We're also looking at legal as well. So there are lots of things that we've done. Nigeria, in the last 3 months, we've also held what we call the maiden edition of the Nigeria-Burundi Business Summit, basically bringing in private sectors from Nigeria to Burundi to come and sit down together. An offshoot of that was to have the Nigeria-Burundi Business Council, which the president of Burundi inaugurated. So what we are showing is that the objective for me personally is to show that young people are ready to get involved in the business of governance. It's also to show that whatever you think that the older people can do, there are lots of young people that are knocking on the door and saying, hey, we are good to go. So we carry the weight of a lot of young people that are yearning to be involved in the position of leadership in the country. So we've done it. We've done a lot of work, and I know that even the minister that I report to gets report on on a constant basis as to the progresses that have been made, because my greatest achievement will be that looking back, Nigeria will say, oh, okay, younger people can actually be ambassadors, and we will expose them to those positions so that we can get involved. Because what we've done is basically to add energy. And because I also have finance background, I also focused a lot on economic diplomacy. In diplomacy, you can either take business from that country to your country, or you also take business from your country to that country as well. It goes both ways. Because we are also within the continent, Africa is one. We usually see ourselves as big brothers to the small African countries. So it's really not a problem. For whatever issues or interests that Nigeria have, I'm sure we've also established that very good relationship with the country that I'm serving at the moment. So it's I hear you loud and clear. It's a position that sometimes older people do because you require experience in doing certain things. But clearly what we've come to show is that when you also put in younger people, certain things are done faster. Certain things are, we are in a haste to achieve. We are always in a hurry to show that we also can do that. So for us, we are on the right path, and I believe that government is seeing. And I also believe that with time, the rest of the younger people, because what we are doing is basically we are like pace setters. Just go ahead and show the good way. Because if we disappoint, obviously what you find is that incoming government or subsequent, we think that there's any need to engage young people in the position. And it's not just here in ambassadorial position. If you also look at other sectors, there are places where we have very young people that are also doing well and representing the country very well, and even within the system as well.
Yeah. All right. Now, you recently talked about some of these countries having respect for Nigeria.
Yes.
But I want you to tell us about how these countries, or some of these countries, actually see Nigeria politically, what our image is like, because there's no denying the fact that our political governance is still largely, driven by ethno-religious sentiments in Nigeria. Is this situation helpful to articulate and protect our interests as a country?
Okay, first of all, let me say that part of the things we do in foreign policy is not to interfere with the running of any country. As much as Nigeria is there, trying to look out for its interests, we do not get involved in whatever that is happening in that country. So we also expect, in diplomacy, it is reciprocity. We also do not expect other countries to also get involved in what is going on in Nigeria. But however, it's not about how they see us. When you move from one country to the others, to the other, what you find is that every country have their peculiar challenges. We can't begin to want our democracy to look like that of America that have stayed over 200 years. We don't want to, every country will clearly sit down and figure out what works for them. In China, for example, their system of governance is pretty much different. What I have seen that happens is that, the West wants to foist its model of democracy to us. And we are not at that point yet, because I'm asking myself, 4 years elections, yes, that's what they say, in Africa, where people are hungry, are the majority really right? If someone can't find, 3 square meals to eat, are the majority really right? We are still struggling with even managing political differences as a people. And we can't begin to compare ourselves or want to look like the developed democracies. Because in America, for example, a husband and wife can go out and one person votes blue, another person votes red, and they're happy, they go home peacefully. In Nigeria, it's a problem. Even when some of us in the Southeast say we are supporting APC, for example, they begin to look at us to, demonize us to say, how can you be, they even call a particular tribe and say that you are supporting a party of this kind of tribe. But these are internal issues that we have to deal with. Because really, in America, they have also evolved what they call the electoral college system. That means that you may have the majority of the votes, but you still not end up becoming the president of America. Under Trump, he didn't have the majority vote, but he won the electoral college. So we will understand the need to sit back and figure out what brand of democracy that works for us. And I think that a lot of African countries need to sit down and evolve to the kind of democracy that works for them. So the truth of the matter, whether we like it or not, is that Nigeria looms large within the continent. Yes, we have issues relating to all kinds of, if you move around the West African corridor, you see a lot of people migrating. A lot of Nigerians are imprisoned in most of these countries. Yes, these are the clear issues we have. But you also find out that what is driving that is because people are looking for better opportunity. People are looking for how to make, how to make a living or how to eke out a living. But even the ones that have traveled, they've been to Libya, all of these countries, traveling by water to all kinds of countries, they will also tell you that something we have that goes for us in this country is the family system, which they don't have abroad. Yeah. The family system is such that, your brother can come to your house without knocking, without notice. You just wake up in the morning, even though you have phone, he won't call you, he'll just knock and say he just came from the village. And you won't throw the person away, you open the door and the person will come in. Nobody does that. You can't even visit your child, or your parents can't come to your house abroad without giving you notice. So we have this family system that sort of accommodates one another. So these are the things that are working for us. Yes, the challenges will always be there, but I'm thinking that the right approach for a lot of developing countries in Africa is to sit down and figure out what works. I give you an example. In my village, for example, I can't take anybody to the police in my immediate kindred without bringing the matter for the kindred people to settle. It's outlawed for you to take your brother to the police no matter how difficult the matter is. You must present it before your kindred and look at these issues. Yes.
Now, let's quickly talk about the point you raised about maybe Southeast and the 2023 presidency and how it's polarizing and all that. Like, what do you think it is for the Southeast? Recently there are a lot of back and forth regarding, especially with the comments by the governor of Anambra and all that. And a lot of people see that maybe the East is putting all its eggs in one basket. Is it something that is really wise?
Well, thank you very much. It's a very important question that you've asked me, and I will tell you this. The Southeast of Nigeria are one of the largest beneficiaries of Project Nigeria. And why do I say so? We are more nomadic than any tribe in the country, because there is hardly a town or a city you will go to Nigeria today in Nigeria.
A village, actually.
And you won't find the Igbo people that are doing business. And when we travel with everything we have. We travel with our mind, we travel with our pocket, we travel with our money, you see them building houses, buying land, doing business, and developing their immediate community. We've, the people of the Southeast are people that are very smart with commerce. You find out that we are doing very well in the area of commerce in Nigeria. But the issue of politics is such that I know that there is always this long agitation that it is the time for the Southeast, or the Southeast hasn't produced presidency in Nigeria. Yes, that's actually the reason why you see all of these issues going back and forth. Yes, there's no gainsaying the fact that we should. But in politics, the best way to deal with politics is to engage. It's not to blackmail. In politics, nothing is, you can feel entitled to something, but you have to also work for it. And that's the reason why some of us are bold enough to work with parties that are not popular in the Southeast. I wouldn't have become an ambassador today if I wasn't a member of the APC. So sometimes when you also take that risk and you're bold enough, you can also get the reward at the end of the day. So for us in the Southeast, yes, I understand the agitation. It's rightfully so. People can always feel that this is what has happened. But the issue is that agitation has to happen through the proper channel. There are political parties in Nigeria. People of the Southeast need to do their negotiation and their lobbying within the political setting and within the laws of the country that we have. I'll give you an example. When we had the primaries for the APC, there were people that came from the Southeast to run, the likes of the former Minister of Science and Technology, former Minister of Education. But in my honest assessment, I don't even think that they engaged very well, because I participated in the primaries and I never actually saw quite a lot of them engaging. Even the people of the Southeast to say that, can we form a common force? Take Ebonyi State, for example. The governor of Ebonyi State was on the ballot. The Minister of Science and Technology was on the ballot. And both of them are from the same state. So why can't both of them sit down and say, okay, let's even bring one person? So a state in the Southeast, 1 out of the 5, have 2 candidates that are running for the same position. Does that show that we have done our work very well? Absolutely no. So I agree to the fact that Soludo have raised this issue. Obi is on the ticket. He's our brother, for example, for crying out loud. He's not even the ABGA candidate, former Chief Judge of Anambra State. He's also our brother. But at the end of the day, you have to sit down and ask yourself, beyond the emotions, beyond the need for justice or whatever we are clamoring for, beyond the cry against marginalization, what are the chances of, the way Nigeria is structured is such that you cannot become president of Nigeria without the support of other tribes. You must earn their trust, you must earn their respect for them to be able to vote for you. So you can't, if every Hausa person votes for an Hausa man, Igbo man votes for an Igbo man, we can't produce a president of Nigeria.
Well, sadly, time is not on our side. Thank you so much, His Excellency, for joining us on Daybreak this morning to discuss the issues bordering on, Nigerian foreign policy. Thank you. All right, so that was the Nigerian ambassador to Burundi, His Excellency Dr. Elijah Onyagba. And with that, we've come to the end of Daybreak on Trust TV this morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same station. I'm Dashan Husseina Usman.
I'm Abdulaziz Abdulaziz. Have a good day.